Thank you, Ronnie. So, good morning, everybody. I'm going to talk about Lustre Audit with Changelogs. To begin with, let's agree on a definition. So, what do we mean by audit? So here is a definition of audit I found on Wikipedia. It states that in IT, audit is used to evaluate an organization's ability to protect its information assets and also its ability to properly dispense this information to only authorized parties. So basically it means that auditing consists in controlling afterwards that all data access that were made on the system were done according to the access control policy in place. And usually this is done by parsing and analyzing access logs. So why would we need audit for Lustre? One motivation is the following. We now have a bunch of interesting security features for Lustre. We can have authentications thanks to Kerberos. We can have mandatory access controls thanks to SNLinux support on Lustre client side. We have isolation and other features as well. So with all those features, you can build a secure Lustre infrastructure. But it's even better if you are able to prove that the very secure Lustre you built and you are happy to build is behaving properly and is as secure as you thought. So audit can be seen as a way to prove that your system is behaving securely. Another motivation for audit comes from the fact that more and more Lustre is used outside of the traditional HPC domain. For instance, in life science, your Lustre file system could host medical records or genome sequencing data. And privacy is crucial for that kind of data. And in fact, regulation imposes audit for those systems. Let's consider that you have a system with a Lustre file system. Users are doctors or researchers. You may want to know which doctors have been able to get access to a given medical record, or conversely, which medical records a given doctor has been able to get access to. So in this case, audit is useful and even mandatory. So the first candidate we could think of when we want to implement audit is SNLinux. Indeed, according to several security specialists, the most important feature in SNLinux is not its mandatory access control mechanism, but it is its logging and auditing facility. It's robust, it's proven, so it's a good candidate. But the drawback is that it could be a little bit overkill to have to enforce SNLinux on all Lustre client nodes if the only purpose is to get audit. Plus, it would mean having to consolidate all the audit logs from SNLinux, so from all the Lustre clients, into a single place so that you get a global view of what the events occurring on your Lustre file system. So another candidate could be the Lustre Changelogs. It's already implemented in Lustre. It's not a third-party tool. It records events occurring on Lustre, so it's nice. It's centralized. It runs on MDS side, and it's transactional. The drawback is that it could lack some information that we need to have a proper auditing facility. So let's look into details about the opportunity of using Changelogs for audit. Changelogs record two main types of events. They record namespace modifications, and they record file metadata changes. So it's really a perfect match for what we need to have audit. All changelog information is stored inside the MDT. It's a Lustre internal file, so it's centralized, as I said earlier. And in order to retrieve the changelog information, you have to use some special command line tools on Lustre clients. And for instance, you retrieve, as an example, I've put here a create changelog entry. So the idea to be able to use this for audit would be to retrieve those records from dedicated Lustre clients and then store them outside of Lustre in a place so that you can analyze the logs later. As I said, changelogs lack some information. In order to have a functional audit facility, we need to be able to identify the subject of any event occurring on Lustre. So it means we need to have the UID, GID information and possibly the need information inside the changelog records. And we also need to, it has to be reliable, so we must record all events occurring. So it means we need to be able to record open, close, XITTR events, and possibly also denied accesses, because it has value in case of audit. So as we decided changelogs was a good candidate to implement audit, we opened JIRA ticket LU 9727. This is a public JIRA ticket, and we pushed patches under this JIRA ticket, so public patches for the community. The first patch was developed in collaboration with ANU in Australia, and it's the base for all the other patches because it enables us to have an arbitrary number of extra fields, so extra information inside the changelog records. So I have put here the URL to the patch if you want to have a look. Then we pushed patches to add to be able to identify the subject of the action, so to add UID, GID, but also need information. So it's 2 patches. Then we have a bunch of patches to add the missing events, the one that we also have to record for audit. So patches to record open events, close in some circumstances, also get XITTR, and even denied open events. And last, we have a couple of patches to optimize changelogs when they are used for audit purpose. We want to avoid flooding the changelogs with too many entries. And it could happen when you activate the audit facility. For instance, let's consider that you have thousands of MPI processes, and all those processes would open the same file for read in order to read, I don't know, some header information. In this case, that would mean you would have thousands of similar changelog entries for open and for close. So we have implemented a mechanism to limit the number of occurrences. So we are able to detect this pattern and only record 1 changelog entry for open and 1 for close. So it avoids flooding the changelogs, and at the same time, from an audit perspective, it's okay because we are not missing any relevant information. We also made an optimization based on the node map feature. In fact, we added a new property in the node map, and when this property is set, it means that all the nodes that are part of the corresponding node map entry will not generate changelog entries. So it can be useful to avoid flooding the changelogs with what you do on HSM agent nodes, for instance. Okay, so then we wanted to see the impact of the audit facility on Lustre behavior and Lustre performance. So here you have the description of our testbed. Basically, we have 1 MDS server, 2 sockets, 20 cores per socket. one MDT which is based on SSD, and we can use up to 32 clients. First, we wanted to evaluate the space consumption on MDT because, as I said, we are generating changelog entries, and they are stored inside the MDT. So this is a very basic test. We created 10,000 files. We opened those files for read, and then we closed and removed the files. So, of course, every kind of changelog entry has a different amount of information, but as a rule of thumb, in this classic access pattern, in order to provision space consumption on the MDT, you have to count 125 bytes per entry on the MDT. Now let's talk about performance. So we wanted to evaluate the impact over metadata performance, so we used MDTest benchmark, first from a single client, directory per process mode. So in this case, the bottleneck is the client and its ability to generate requests to the metadata server, and it's also sensible to the latency of every request. So when we, so this is the create case. When we activate the basic changelogs feature, we can see a 4% performance drop. This is because for every file that is being created in Lustre, we are writing a create changelog entry. When we activate the full audit facility, we write not only one but 3 different changelog entries per file being created, one for create, one for open, and one for close. And in this case, the performance drop is around 13%. So we note that the performance drop is directly related to the number of changelog entries we write. And when we activate the rate limit feature, there is no performance difference. This is because in the case of MDTest, in this test case, every process is using its own file. This is not a shared file access pattern, so the rate limit feature is not triggered. But the good news is that we show with this test that we do not add extra burden that would give an additional penalty. Okay, so for read, when we activate the basic changelogs feature, there is no performance difference because there is no changelog entry written into the changelogs. When we activate the full audit facility, we write 2 changelog entries, one for open and one for close every time. So we have 13–14% performance drop in this case. So you have to note that in the case of a read, without the changelogs and without the audit, it's a read inode operation only. But because of the changelogs we have to write, we also have to write blocks inside the device hosting the MDT. So it explains the performance penalty. And for remove, we have the same performance penalty for all cases. It's around 5%, and this is because we are writing 1 changelog entry per file being removed. So now if we run the metadata benchmark from 32 clients, we are able to saturate the MDS side, the metadata server, and even more the MDT device becomes the real bottleneck. And so if we activate the audit facility, we increase even more the bottleneck, and in fact the bottleneck becomes the changelogs file. So we observe a significant performance drop. So it means for a metadata intensive workload, we are thinking about moving the changelogs on a device which is different from the MDT. because the idea would be to split the load between the regular file system operations and changelog accesses, and also possibly store the changelogs into memory, into non-volatile memory. Okay, so as a conclusion, we have developed a functional audit facility for Lustre based on Lustre changelogs. All patches have been pushed to the community under GRTKTLU 9727. Review is still ongoing, so any help is welcome. And when review is done, the next step would be to find a usable changelogs consumer for audit purpose. Our first assessment is that Robinhood would not be a good fit. Indeed, Robinhood's main purpose is to build an image of what you have on a running Lustre file system, whereas for auditing purpose, we need to keep records, an history of what happened on a Lustre file system. So it means we will have to probably have to develop a dedicated changelogs consumer for audit. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Hi. I have two questions. The first one is about saturating the emitting change records at a high rate. Have you considered using several catalogs, like one per CPT or something like this, rather than having them in memory?
Yeah, you're right. So another possibility to split the load in order not to have one changelog entry. The challenge with this is that when you are consuming the changelogs in order to retrieve the audit information, you still need to get a sequence of events. So it would mean having to reorder the records. So that could be a little bit challenging, but maybe not that much.
And second question, if I may. With catalogs as they are today, you have 4 billion slots. Mm-hmm. Currently, the approaches that we have, I don't think all of them are implemented, but what have been considered for the case where the catalog is full is to either switch to read-only mode or drop the older records. Neither is suitable in the audit case. So how do you think you can? What do you think you can do when the catalogs are full? That's I think at 50K operation per second, it takes less than 1 day to fill a catalog.
Yeah. So this is indeed a challenge. So this is why we are already starting working on a changelogs consumer, because we really need to be able to consume the changelogs. So the idea is to store them outside of Lustre and at a significant rate, so that we do not saturate the Lustre internal changelogs. But even with this, we would need a mechanism that would take some action in case it becomes full, because for audit, for a serious audit facility, we must not lose any.
You cannot drop them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thanks for reviewing the patches.
One quick comment about the changelog scalability. I think in the DNE2 time, we added the facility to make larger changelog records. And so you could actually have more than 4 billion changelogs now. It's not active because it changed the consumers as well, but I think the functionality is there. But the other question I had, have you thought of making like the changelog consumer to output the standard format that regular Linux audit is generating, like just a plugin to convert so that you could use existing audit tools?
So we had an internal discussion on the best way to implement this. First, we thought about using a database to store the changelogs, but maybe we thought it could be easier because, well, the first challenge is to store the changelogs, but then to be able to retrieve an information rapidly. For instance, I was giving the example of you have one file and you want to be able to know who accessed this file. So maybe in a first step we would make something very basic where we store the information inside a device like XFS or ZFS formatted, and just a simple tree based on the feed and then the UID. And
Hi, an observation that synchronously recording open events on the MDT opens the door for size on MDS again, because you now have a way to mark dirty files. You record the open for writes, and now you can come back and later if you need to clean up. That was generally the problem with size on MDS in the first place. You never knew which the dirty files were. So now you're recording it, so you can come back and actually know what are dirty. It seems like this would be a really useful way to kind of get there.
Hi, could you explain about the change logs on a separate node? At first looks that it's not simple to make it atomic, such operations like change logs writing. Please, several words.
So we haven't looked into the details yet. So of course, the way changelogs are managed at the moment, like the changelogs are just like Lustre internal logs used for configuration. So maybe we would need a separate mechanism to deal with changelogs containing audit information, because at the moment it's just primitives that would create and then get a handle on an L or L log. So yeah, it's not simple to now to say, oh, I want this on this device.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sébastien.
Thank you.